Greetings and welcome to a very special Halloween-themed episode of the Wild Mouse Podcast. I am your host, Taylor Bartle, and I am joined once again by the co-host of the Old SwitchAroo podcast, Mike Lund. Welcome back, Mike.
I am glad to be here. A pleasure to come back and to slowly work my way through what Southern California has to offer.
Yeah, this was a subject that you emailed me and said you were looking to talk about this one specifically for the Halloween season. It is the only one of the, I guess you could say, the big three Halloween parties going on in Southern California, if you include, the Oogie Boogie Bash and Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios. And this is the only one of those three that I haven't been to. It is Knott's Scary Farm.
Yeah, I think I'd probably put Magic Mountain's Fright Fest in there as well, but
I haven't been to that one either. So
yeah, but this definitely is. I think it's the top one, and I think Knott's Berry Farm and Knott's Scary Farm not quite as much, but Knott's Berry Farm I think it's overlooked. It's very overshadowed by being just down the road from Disneyland, and so I think there's a lot of that it has gotten easily sort of overlooked. There's a lot about it that I did not realize that it's more of a trendsetter, which will come up with this as well. Or if I'll give a brief explanation of what Knott's Berry Farm is.
Yeah, sure.
So Knott's Berry Farm is a theme park that started off exactly as what its name says. 1920s, it was a berry farm that was selling products. And you get into the 30s, the Depression, they started selling fried chicken, which has remained a staple of it since then. And then the lines for basically the food were so long, they started building in attractions to keep people entertained. And so by like 1940, 1941, they started actually putting in additional things and building attractions. And as it slowly developed into a park in a pre-Disney era, it was this idea of, well, we have all these people. Now we can start setting up contracts with people to be like, you want to come in and operate something and give us a cut, which is very different from how we think about theme parks, especially nowadays.
Yeah, that's more like a state fair or something.
Yeah, and I think it was at one point called like a summer-long state fair. So it built up that way. It influenced a lot of Disney. So actually, I believe the first place to do the idea of having a ride where you don't see how long the line is, that you kind of go in and it's sort of a hidden line, was the Calico Mine Train at Knott's, which is a thing that then Disney saw and then was like, well, we're going to do that. And certainly growing up in Southern California, because it was near Disney, it always kind of felt like a second-rate thing compared to Disney. And gradually, a lot of it, I've developed a much bigger appreciation because I've realized, oh, this did a lot of stuff first. And so that kind of leads us right into our topic for today, which is that it's often cited as the first theme park to really just do a full Halloween kind of event when it started doing Knott's Scary Farm in 1973.
Yeah, I've got some notes about the kind of creation of it, and it's interesting because, like you said, in 1973 there was a late night TV horror host, think like a Sven Gulli or an Elvira or like one of those kind of characters, named Sinister Seymour, played by a guy named Larry Vincent, and he booked a live appearance at Knott's Berry Farm for the Halloween season. And in September of that year, Bill Hollingshead and Gary Salisbury, who worked for the marketing team at Knott's, decided, hey, why don't we just build a whole event around this live show? And that's how the first Knott's Scary Farm, or at the time it was called Knott's Halloween Haunt, was born.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting sort of ideas that got attached to that was the guy who had designed and built and ran the mine train, which was Bud Hurlbut. I think I'm saying that right. Basically, it figured like just putting up like some decorations was not enough, And so he basically just put on a gorilla suit and scared people on the train. So it massively influential from a relatively small effect. In fact, he then went and created his own theme park in Southern California, kind of based
really?
off Castle Park, which is about an hour east of LA.
Okay. Never heard of it. Is it good?
It's got a few roller coasters. It actually does its own Halloween thing at this point. It's interesting to check out once, having been to all the other stuff in Southern California once or twice, but it doesn't have it feels small compared to a lot of the other stuff in Southern California.
It's not that upper tier.
No, but it was better than I'd expected it to be.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, still to this day, they have live actors in the rides for Knott's Scary Farm, which I think is like, I don't think any other park does that.
I am thinking which other. A lot really don't. It's certainly very difficult. Like, even with that, you can actually see that they're wired into their positions for safety's sake at this point. But yeah, it is kind of tough to think of somewhere else that has something similar.
Yeah, because I mean, Disney has the overlays on the rides. Obviously, the Nightmare Before Christmas overlay we all know about, and they have other rides where they'll do certain decorations and stuff. But like there's no live actors in the rides, and Universal, all the live actors are in the mazes. There's none actually in the rides themselves. So
yeah, no, you really would like you could go back to early Haunted Mansion. I think had it briefly toyed around with having someone in a suit of armor on it.
Yeah, but I think that was before it even opened. I think that was something they toyed with but never actually went through with.
Yeah, so you definitely have to go back far to sort of find it. And I think with Knott's, I think that reflects some amount of its commitment towards really relying on skill of performers. Because you have people that are on the ride or around the ride a little bit to scare people. You've got the mazes, which we'll come back around to. And then you have the idea of the walkarounds of the people that are in costume that are able to kind of go out and scare people, which other places do as well. And I think with Knott's, the story is that when they initially started that, one of its themed areas is a ghost town. And I think it was in that area, they kind of just had some rooms where there was windows. And the idea was that, well, okay, we'll put some people in costume in these rooms. So as people are walking by, they'll kind of see these sort of scary sort of scenes. And the story goes that they were sort of assigning people and they didn't have like the right key for one of the rooms. So they got down to like, okay, we're out of rooms. You just go out into the crowd. And then the next night it was no one's going in rooms, everybody in the crowd. And still at this point, like one of the things that I think is notable from the attending side of things is I always feel like Knott's is very heavy on prosthetics and makeup rather than masks. And where that becomes very significant, I go to a ton of Halloween events. So I have probably been to, honestly, a couple dozen, at least, different haunts of various scales. Generally, the Southern California area, I went to a lot when I was in Tennessee as well. So I've been to a lot of these, and usually what you will have is they'll often have just like people in masks, and you're kind of limited to them doing things like yelling or snarling or shaking a can or something to try to scare people. Knott's can certainly do that, but Knott's, because they really rely on the performers, and I think because it's developed the reputation it has, it pulls people in and they keep coming back. You can get so much more out of someone who's in makeup or prosthetics because they can talk, they can communicate, they can erode people on a much deeper level than just scaring someone with shock.
Yeah, and they can make, facial expressions. They can have like a big creepy smile or, have creepy eyes or something that you can see, whereas a mask might, the eyes would be sunk deep in the mask and you might not be able to see them. So yeah, especially in the scare zones, not so much in the rides. The rides are usually just kind of masked because they're just popping out and it's a real quick thing. But the very first Knott's, like I said, Halloween haunt at the time was 3 days long, October 26th through the 28th, 1973. The tickets sold out before the event even began because tickets were $4. Just for reference, tickets this year start at $64. Mostly the first one was, like I said, it was built around this show with Sinister Seymour, and so it was very much focused on live entertainment. There was, and then like we were saying, the scare actors. There was monsters, like you said, the Ghost Town area was a big region, and then on Calico Mine Ride, Timber Mountain Log Ride, and the now defunct Haunted Shack were like the big maze, quote unquote rides. Calico Mine Ride was rethemed as the Ghostway Express. Timber Mountain Log Ride was rethemed as Satan's Sawmill. And the Haunted Shack, which it's already the Haunted Shack, so it's funny that they had to retheme it, but it was Monster Maze.
I mean, it wouldn't be the only place in Orange County, California that rethemes a Halloween thing at Halloween. So
that's true, yeah. In 1976, they introduced a show called The Hanging, which this is something you told me about, and it was a public execution show, basically. The show introduced a character in the early 1980s named Sarah Marshall, who was the Green Witch, and this has kind of become part of Knott's Scary Farm mythology ever since. In the show, Marshall was sentenced to death, but just as the noose began to tighten around her neck, she would mysteriously disappear and curse the whole town, hence why there are monsters and ghosts and goblins and ghouls roaming around the park. In 2019, they debuted Origins, The Curse of Calico, which picked up Sarah Marshall's story, and it picks up right after the failed hanging, and this is still like one of the more popular mazes. It's around for this year too. So the Green Witch is still a big part of the Knott's Scary Farm lore. They introduced the first standalone maze in 1977 called 10 Chilling Chambers. Do you know anything about 10 Chilling Chambers? Because I could not find any information on it.
I don't know too much other than they brought something back to be a heavy reference to that when they did the 50th. In 2023, they really tried to do a lot of callbacks to everything previous. I think the biggest thing about that still holds up really was that it was the decision to have, I think that was the decision to have a sort of a building that was its own. This is just meant to be a maze for the Halloween stuff, really.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't a re-theme of anything else.
Yeah, it wasn't, or other places especially, it'll be like, okay, we've redone the queue for a ride that we're just going to close for a month kind of things. Whereas that really was this is as a theme park, we are making this part of what we will just use for Halloween.
Right. But yeah, like I said, I could not find any information on 10 Chilling Chambers. I don't know what exactly it consisted of, other than I assume 10 Chilling Chambers.
One hopes.
Seems like a safe bet. In 1981, things really kind of started to take off, and they started adding celebrities to the mix. Elvira joined, which seems like a natural progression, but also Weird Al somehow became part of the cast.
Yeah, which I'm not sure how long Weird Al was there, but at the time I started going, frequently would have been mid-2000s, and was there almost every year. And it was a handful of years before we had a night that we don't have anything else to do. We've gotten through everything. Let's go check out this show. And we had thought, to be fair to them, Elvira's in the name, but also I just presumed that was a licensed deal. Mm-hmm. We had just figured they've contracted a deal to use likeness and the name and stuff. We'll go check it out. And we're partway through the show, and the friend I'm there with, we're just wait a minute. That's actually her.
That's Cassandra Peterson, yeah.
Yeah. It's like they actually have Cassandra Peterson. We need to come to this show more often. It's like I would have been at the show a lot more if I knew they actually had her. I just presumed it was they were casting someone else for it.
Yeah. No, apparently Cassandra Peterson was a fairly prominent part of all of the Halloween Haunt events up until 2001.
Yeah, and she continued to do stuff for at least a chunk after that, because this probably would have been around 2008 or so was when I realized that she was there.
Yeah, apparently once Knott's Berry Farm sold, which I think sold to Cedar Point first, or
but it was definitely that for, I think, all through that time period. That's through like the 2000s.
Okay, well, they wanted to go in a more family friendly direction, and so that's why Elvira was let out of her contract at that time. Also in the 80s, the hanging turned into kind of more what it is kind of right now, which is a parody of pop culture events. Not so much the witch, not so much the whole kind of dark and spooky. They wanted to make it more light. I wonder how much they were inspired by the Bill and Ted show that was going on at Universal Studios.
Yeah, the two were both very similar. It was an interesting thing, actually, of, in my mind, sort of the three heavy Halloween things in Southern California that are Halloween in a scary direction were always Universal, Knott's, and Magic Mountain. And it was always interesting that Magic Mountain would go for scary, but they really wouldn't go towards comedy, and they certainly wouldn't go towards what I'd think of as more edgy or provocative stuff. Whereas for a solid stretch, you had The Hanging at Knott's, which very much took on the identity of a will offend everybody kind of thing. And then Bill and Ted's at Universal did the same thing, the same pop culture thing. And Universal also would turn their Waterworld show into Slaughter World, which was basically same stunt show, but now with fake blood and sex jokes. So fun.
That's an upgrade. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So both Universal and Knott's very much had this extra tone to them in a way that Magic Mountain, Be My Local Park, didn't have. And it was interesting to be like, it's interesting which things they were willing to do.
Yeah. This is around the time when Knott's really started to kind of move away from the really dark horror and kind of move into more of a black comedy kind of idea. But a lot of the mazes and attractions were still pretty dark. Like one notable one was the Terror of London, which was all based around Jack the Ripper.
That was a fun one.
That's another interesting thing that they had, and I don't know if they still have them to this day, but a lot of like historical kind of horror mazes.
Yeah, I think one of the distinctions between Knott's and Universal, like, not turn this into a double feature-y kind of thing, but the comparison is sort of warranted, is Universal really relies on these are the properties that we own.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, not necessarily this is the new stuff coming out, but it's always just say these are the properties we own. They don't do too much that is just we're going to explore an idea. Like even some of the things that aren't directly their properties usually are tied to something. Like they've done an Alice Cooper maze in the past at Universal, but it's tied to something. Whereas Knott's has had some of that. They had a really weird Beowulf maze back when that 3D movie came out. It was very strange. And there's a few other things in that vein. It feels like usually they've got like they usually have something like 8 to 12 mazes. And like 1 or 2 will be tied to movies. And I think part of this may also be that it feels like usually they're about a third of their things are new. So they're always, that puts you at like a 3-year lifespan or so.
Sure, yeah.
And so they'll have some stuff that's tied to a property, but very little. Most of it is they are having to come up with their own ideas. And so in that sense, if you can draw from stuff like that's historical, or if you can draw from stuff like Edgar Allan Poe,
yeah,
you can start pulling in some things where you don't have to reinvent everything, that you can borrow from some sort of source material and have something that's not tied to a movie so that you can keep it around for a few years and doesn't feel out of place.
Yeah, I mean, Universal just they just have more IP, so of course they're going to use it. Whereas Knott's is it's a berry farm. They don't deal in IP.
It's important to know the single biggest, like, you can look like Universal and say Dracula came out of that. The Wolfman came out of that. The Mummy came out of that. All these, you look at Knott's Berry Farm, the biggest thing that came out of that is literally boysenberries.
Right.
Like Walter Knott of Knott's Berry Farm named that and cultivated. Yeah, that's where they're very big on that. That's like the two big things to come out of Knott's Berry Farm in my mind are boysenberries and Knott's Scary Farm.
Yeah. I also feel like the mazes that Universal makes up don't get as much, the lines are never as long. It doesn't really get as much hype. Everyone wants to go to, the Stranger Things maze. Everyone wants to go to the House of a Thousand Corpses maze. Everyone wants to go to the things they know. And I don't know if that really hurts Knott's in a way. I think people don't really expect it from Knott's. So it's not so much that people are going to say, I'm going to go to Universal because they have the Us maze instead of going to Knott's, who has, the Jack the Ripper maze or whatever.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, people know what they're going to get out of Knott's, and the quality of that is enough that I think they don't need to rely on it. And then it just becomes what works for them. And because if you don't mind sticking with an idea, like this is actually a great example of this, was they actually had one where they kind of changed it up over a couple years. Was there was a maze called Trick or Treat, and it was just sort of a general Halloween themed thing going through a house. There's a witch involved, and I believe it's that the first year I went through that, like the lights were on and everything, like you would expect a place to have. And I may be doing this in the wrong order. They may have done this, swap the order of these, but I have gone to it both where it was just a regular, you're going through this house and the lights are on and everything. It's like a normal maze. And then I went through it where when you entered, they gave you a flashlight. Oh. And the lights were off for the whole thing. And the flashlights had some sort of like RFID technology. So you're given this flashlight, and as you're going through, you're able to shine it around and see stuff, all that. At a certain point, it switches over to a black light, and there's like things written on the wall. And you go through another couple rooms like that. And then, right at the end, it starts to flicker. And starts to go out as you're approaching like the final room or two. So you think your light's going out until you notice everybody's is doing that.
That's super cool.
It was awesome.
Man. So it was it wasn't affiliated with the movie Trick or Treat in any way. It was just, okay. That's such a great idea, though.
Yeah, and I think so many the ones they've done, because they are fairly free, it allows them to kind of come up with their own ideas, and then those ideas really can stick around. So I think they had one that was like the Doll Factory, which wasn't tied to anything beyond just dolls are creepy.
Sure.
And I was around that one felt like it was around for a bit more than average, and was just really good and really popular. So like those develop their own sense of popularity. I think a lot of them do. And some of the areas have developed their own, the walkarounds have developed their own themes that have lasted longer. Sort of their midway area is clowns.
Sure. Yeah. Gotta have clowns.
And it's incredible to be going through there. And just because even though, they're selling out for the Halloween stuff, they're not, the crowds are not as distributed as they would be during the day. So back there ends up fairly empty in spots. Not as though you're not the only one, but you're not in a crowd, which has meant, like, I've been going through there, and then suddenly you see one person running, and there was one clown behind her on a tricycle chasing her. And as she's running through, other clowns are coming out and joining the chase.
Oh, nice.
And so from when it first saw her, it was like 1. And by the time she left our vision, it was like 7. And since they're clowns, they can talk and stuff. So it's like, the last time I was there, we were on our way out. And a friend's wife had started to make a comment of, there weren't that many people walking around in here this year. And what she had not noticed was right behind her was one of the clowns had kind of come up on us. And as soon as she said that, the clown just comes around and just like, would you like to make a complaint about that? And we're like, right on the way out. I think that one of the other more recent times, one of them came up behind me while I was talking to people. We were waiting for part of the group to get back from the restroom. And I kind of did have the, like, as I'm talking, I gestured, I moved a hand back and just kind of felt my hand hit something. And it's just like, he's right behind me, isn't he?
And that's where all like a lot of the sliders and stilt walkers and stuff are too, right?
They'll do a little bit in there. I think of the sliders more in the Ghost Town area.
Okay.
Which has this incredible theming of, because Ghost Town theme, Knott's is very big on fog machines to a level that I don't think I've seen anyone anywhere else ever do. Just about. And so there are areas where kind of like the only thing you kind of will see in spots will be like the sparks of that through the fog and whatever light up stuff people are wearing. But yeah, the sliders there are really good.
Yeah.
I think I've been there early in the season or when the season goes far enough past Halloween that they're still open, but a lot of people kind of forget about Halloween things as soon as it hits November. And just watch them doing stuff like setting up trash cans and seeing how if they can do a long slide and get between the trash cans, which is super neat.
Yeah. So in the 80s, they kind of expanded more from just mazes into what is now called the scare zones. These areas were transformed into these nightmarish landscapes populated by menacing creatures and eerie characters, like you said, clowns or ghosts. Visitors were exposed to unexpected scares as they wandered through haunted streets, creepy forests, and ghostly graveyards. So you were no longer safe when you weren't in a maze. You were now, anywhere you are in the park, you are prone to getting scared.
Yeah. And like the Ghost Town area, they've cut back the hours on it, but it has like a restaurant with like some outdoor seating that overlooks the scare zone. And it was great because you could just go out there and eat and you just kind of be overlooking people being scared the whole time. And actually was eating there and then had one of the scare actors steal the ketchup from our table. And there with a friend of mine, my friend Larry, who's very big into these and also very big into ketchup. And so like when they were trying to mess with us, it was like, do not take the ketchup. And so he took the ketchup.
Of course.
And then like an hour later, we're going by the restaurant. And he's a more outgoing person than me. So we're going by and we see that same scare actor. And my friend makes a comment like, yeah, be careful. He'll steal your ketchup. And the scare actor grabs the ketchup from one of the tables, runs over to him, hands him the ketchup, and then starts yelling thief and pointing at him. And then just goes, he doesn't know what to do with it. How embarrassing. Meanwhile, me and my friend's son are both just doubled up in laughter.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, you've started a fight, and you can't win this.
Yeah, you are vastly outnumbered, first of all. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and it's just, it's the level of personality that it really it reflects a lot of talent to have them be that good.
Yeah, I know there's this one clown that I see on Instagram and stuff all the time, and she has like two voices she'll bounce back and forth. One of them, is like a very cute, sweet kind of voice, and then she has this like death growl. There's a video I remember seeing multiple times, I think it was either last year or the year before, of someone tying their shoes, and she would like come up and be like, giving him advice, loop, swoop, and pull, and all this, and then it's just like, tie him.
Yeah, it's interesting how some of those become their own personalities. My brother had worked Magic Mountain for their Halloween stuff, and a couple of the clowns there kind of had developed enough of their own character to be able to kind of take them elsewhere for events. Heckles and Twitch,
good names.
Yeah,
it seems like those actors get pretty much free range to do a lot of stuff.
They get a lot, and it definitely. It can pay off because some of what they do, both walkarounds and some of the ones that are in mazes that are really good can, like, I think it's because they know that's how you get some of the most memorable things. Like the best scare I have ever seen at any event ever was at Knott's. Actually, this started in one of the mazes.
Oh boy.
Is there's an area where just for the Halloween stuff, they kind of move out a fence. So you're kind of into an area that's not normally in the park, because it's basically additional warehouses that are all haunts. And for crowd control, for years, there was 2 mazes that were one after the other. You'd go into one building. As soon as you came out of that building, you go into the second one. Just it was easier to only have one line. And so it was, the first one was like a prison theme, sort of generic-ish. And the second might have been to the Tooth Fairy that year.
Okay.
We're going through the first one, and with haunts like this, there's so many people going through that you're pretty much going through in a single file line. And I draw that distinction because when you go to a lot of smaller things, I guess, or technically fancier things, you'll get into situations where it's like, okay, no, you're in a group and there's this many people in the group and that's it.
Right.
And that kind of allows them to stage things a little bit differently. But if it's just a constant line of people, you know, they're all kind of just scare someone, reset kind of patterns. There was someone who, to me, her look and energy has always just kind of reminded me of Magenta from Rocky Horror, but with black hair, but still, like, the hair is large. She was fairly tall and solid and able to be intimidating.
Okay.
And I don't know what set this guy off, but a guy ahead of us, she starts talking to and whispering to. And like, we're in the part of the prison, it's supposed to be like the prison showers, and I know I overheard her say something about showering, and whatever happened there he started to kind of bolt, and like, we're in a single file line, there's only so much you can do, and he's there with a couple other people, and she has clearly identified that she has found someone who is terrified.
Yeah, that's her victim.
Yeah. And so she's, clearly having an effect. And as we're going room to room and winding around, she reappears because she knows the shortcuts of the maze.
Yeah, right.
And so she keeps moving ahead to continue to scare him. And like, he's running back past us, and then he's running back up as she comes in at different directions. At one point, he took his sweater off to hopefully not be recognized. However, as soon as he came around a corner and saw her, he panicked again. So it was real, like, he didn't play it cool to try to get by, so it didn't work. So we're going through this whole warehouse of this, and he is just being wrecked. And we come out of the first building, and there's like maybe like a 30 or 40 foot gap between buildings. And so we walk out, and we just see her scaring him. And it's set up of, you're going to have to head into this next building. He just ducks under a chain and takes off rather than go into the next building. And she just walks after him and just steps over the chain. And so I was like, okay, they're gone. That was entertaining. We go through the next building, whole maze. So handful of minutes later, we come out of that, and I noticed that she's just standing at the exit, right, like up against the wall. And I'm like, guys, get over here. Don't look. She's there. Wait here for a moment. We're waiting here. And we wait a bit, and eventually they come out. This guy and his friends come out, and it's just kind of, you walk out of this building, you have to walk around it, and then walk all the way back out, because it's like a building and a building. So we have a ways back to get back to everything. And so he's just kind of walking, and she just, as soon as he was out, just starts walking after him. And then at some point, he looks back and notices she's behind her, and he starts walking faster, and she starts walking faster. And then he's moving up to a jog, and she's moving up to a jog. And behind behind her are his friends trying to keep up with this, and behind them, we are following now. And she chased him a quarter of the way across the park.
God.
It was amazing. That might have been actual damage done to that guy by the end of this, because this is probably, all of that combined feels like it was probably on the order of like 15, 20 minutes
Wow.
of one person just targeting him. And it was incredible.
That's dedication.
Yeah, it was amazing. And it is the kind of thing where clearly they didn't mind her following him through a second maze and then a quarter of the way across the park, and not just being like, get back in position. And, memorable thing for him, memorable thing for a lot of other people.
So scarring, if nothing.
Yeah, scarring for him.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Like I said, it is the best single scare I have ever seen, because it just kept going.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's the talent I appreciate out of that.
Yeah. So during the 2000s, this is when Knott's kind of started collaborating with some of the famous horror franchises. They introduced a Saw house, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre house, and an Evil Dead house. So they all had these mazes that immersed visitors in the worlds of those kind of iconic films. It didn't really stick around, it seems like. I don't know how long any of these deals lasted with these franchises, but by the 2010s, they were all kind of gone. Knott's was back to doing their own custom things. But in the 2010s, they really started to embrace technology. They started getting more high-tech special effects, more detailed sets, more sophisticated makeup. And they also introduced VR, which is a choice.
Yeah. I remember they have had one or two that have done weirder things on that. And I think I've generally passed. I think they've usually tacked money onto those, where it's like, you can go through it normally or for money with this. And I'm like, I paid my money.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the last time you were on, we talked about VR and, doing VR on a roller coaster. And we were like, well, that just seems like a hat on a hat.
Yeah.
This is kind of the same thing. Like, you have these scare actors. What do you need VR for?
Yeah. Like if you wanted to do a thing of for more money, we'll sweeten the deal. They had already, by the 2010s, they'd already done, I think by the 2010s, around then they'd introduced another thing that I am disappointed that they no longer have, which was the skeleton key.
What is that?
It was like basically addition to lanyard, you'd have like this key, which was sort of I think it was combined with their front of the line pass. So you would both skip the lines, but also you would enter through a different room than everybody else.
Oh, interesting.
And so two of the ones they had the year that they did this that still stick with me. One was sort of a general swamp voodoo thing. And if you had this special key, and again, because most of this is your single file going through, and that's where like you cannot add too much to that, really. What they would do is, because there were fewer people coming through this other way, you could actually do more of a set piece. And so for the voodoo one, you were put in a room and there was some stuff that happened. One thing led to another, and you had to hide in coffins that were up against the walls. And then they opened the doors behind you.
Oh.
So you're hiding in this coffin, and then the wall behind you's gone. And when you come out through that, then you would be fed in to the more standard thing. They also had a sort of dark carnival thing, and the skeleton key started you off with a seance, which did use some technology in terms of screens and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like they had you sit or stand around a table, and they had a little bit of an extra thing to it. So it was a neat way for them to add these extra set pieces for extra money, but do something that they couldn't do. They couldn't scale that up because you just couldn't get enough people through fast enough normally.
Yeah. So how long did that last?
It lasted a couple years, and I liked it when they had it. And then, so they still have the front of the line stuff, but they no longer have that attached to it. And you don't even get those keys anymore unless you buy them separately.
Of course.
Like it had been part of that pass. And so it was neat when it was very neat for a bit. Like I'd love to see them bring that back because it was an interesting way to set up a little bit more, and they could add a little bit of storytelling to those because you would have dialogue and sometimes more scripted interaction.
So do you think they got rid of it just because it was like a budgetary thing? Like there weren't enough people paying the extra to justify the added sets and added actors? Or
I'm not even sure. It may have just been it was an extra. Like it could have actually been that there was too many people and they were still having problems getting people through.
Yeah, that's true.
That if they'd rather just be able to sell more, you don't want them to then be like, well, I paid for the thing for the front of the line and now I'm still stuck in lines.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, it's a little bit just comes into throughput. Like they gradually whittled down. One of the mazes actually did have a show as a start for a while. That it was supposed to be like a paranormal investigation going on.
Was that Paranormal Inc.? Was that one?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was really cool because they would load you all in, and it was supposed to be like, oh, we're doing this thing, and then it would just things would go horribly wrong. And in that one, like they dropped a sheet down through the crowd and would just split the crowd into two groups that you would then go through different doors that would open up. And like part of my group was on the wrong side of that sheet. And it was very much like, where the heck did they go? It's like, okay, well, we will hopefully see them later. And it was a cool intro show, but over time they sort of wound that down a bit. So I think they were moving more towards, they'll do stuff that'll be fancier for like 1 year for one maze rather than the other thing really was the idea of every maze has their own special room kind of thing.
Yeah.
To justify it.
Okay. Huh. Well, in the 2010s, in addition to adding all this VR and extra technology, they also introduced the idea of basically having some of these mazes be escape rooms. There was one called Trapped, which was an immersive and interactive maze, and you had to solve puzzles and physical challenges and navigate through intense and unsettling environments in order to get your way out. Did you ever do any of these ones?
I didn't do that one. One of the other things they did, I think I didn't do that one. One of the things they did also do was they had sort of a zombies light gun thing.
Okay.
You were given rifles, and the idea was that the zombies would try to approach you, and if you shot them, like they had collars that would like light up, indicating they were hit and they were supposed to stop or something. And it somehow kept score, and I don't fully trust how it worked. So you'd go through in decently large groups, and so you had like a whole little military drill instructor that would give you the instructions before you went out there, kind of stuff. So that one I did do, but it was tricky even when they had it because it would it was a capacity thing. They could only get so many people through.
Sure, yeah. But so it was basically like zombie laser tag?
Pretty much.
I mean, that's cool. It's a a new twist on just having a zombie maze where zombies are just kind of popping out. Now you're armed and you can defend yourself.
Yeah, and it did work fairly well. I've been to a couple things that have explored that as a concept. I've done zombie paintball at two different places. One where it was like the one that I did in California that was just that. I can't remember if that actually may have still been laser based. There's one I did in Tennessee that was zombie paintball from a trailer. That like it was a hayride.
Yeah, I was just gonna say somewhere in California, I know there's like a haunted hayride that has, I believe it's paintball.
Yeah, there's one in Tennessee that does that, and it is the kind of thing where it's like, I think so that people don't complain they didn't get to shoot anything. There's several spots where like, oh, the trailer has pulled up in front of a barn, and there's just a guy in like 8 inches of padding everywhere as a zombie just standing there. And it's like, okay, like I'm not wasting my time for this. But there was also parts where we're coming along and someone comes running out of a creek. And I'm like, that's why I'm here. Like I may not hit him, but that's the experience that I'm after, not just I got to say I shot someone part of it.
Well, yeah, at that point, it might as well just be scarecrows or like cardboard cutouts or something.
Yeah. There's no fun in that. But they just ran out of a creek, so we opened fire. That's more of the experience. But yeah, so Knott's has definitely done that, and it's just you can't get people through as quickly, and Knott's has these giant crowds. Like before it opens, you'll just have everybody in front of the gate waiting, and then they'll gradually start to have the scare actors infiltrate the crowd, which is its own great fun. Up until the gate actually opens to let you into the rest of the park.
Yeah, I've always liked going to local smaller haunted houses and stuff, and I always love when there's people working the lines and whatnot. I worked at one when I was in high school, and that was always my favorite, was getting to work the lines.
Yeah, no, I think anything that allows the scare actor to have enough time to really interact is what's notable, and where they're allowed to do that. I mean, it's why the walkarounds are considered sort of one of the more prestige positions.
Right.
Like I know it was a Magic Mountain, is that there was a greater prestige because you had to be good at that.
Sure. Yeah, you got to be kind of an actor.
Yeah. So like my brother did that, and actually he also did community theater and stuff.
There you go.
But it meant that there was a whole personality to it. It was great to go to that because he'd do stuff like come by, grab my soda, take a drink, and continue walking. And you could watch everybody around me just suddenly have their idea that they were safe shatter. Because it was like, I didn't know they could do that.
Right. Yeah. It's like, well, they can't, but it's my brother. Yeah. But you don't know that, so
yeah, they don't know that. So it works great. So yeah, there's a whole lot of that, and a lot of small, like it. I think for smaller places, it's what makes or breaks them.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you have good people working it? And some of the best smaller things happen. Someone here is really good at this. Whereas for Knott's, you just kind of see that separate out into who's doing the walkarounds, and those really have to do a lot. Whereas in the mazes can be a lot more hit or miss because it really depends on how good they are. And I've seen situations where they're really good at reading people and knowing who to go after. And then the flip side, they had a maze for years that was called Corn Stalkers. And there's a bit that was just like supposed to be the look of like a field of corn and just corn husks and everything. And I had basically made eye contact with someone who was entirely covered in the corn husks and has like this much of a gap for their eyes. And it was like, I have spotted you. Do not scare me. Scare the guy behind me who doesn't know you're there.
Right.
And it was this, like, you should have read this better. Because I'm like, the person behind me would have screamed.
Yeah. But so they went after you.
They went after me. And it was like, you're not going to, which I don't react to these anyways. There's definitely a part that's like, I am there for a lot of the screaming of others is definitely a big part of it for me. But also the artistry of it. And it was just like, why did you waste this on me?
Yeah.
It's partially why I try to get my wife to go to these things, because she scares really well, which is also why she doesn't like to go to these things. Knott's was rough for her. I think the first one we did, actually, it was the lights go out on you thing, and she did not do well with that. So, and that was like the first one, and she was nearly to be like, I'm done now. But it's like things like, and I think anyone that goes to Halloween stuff may remember when this rolled out, especially in LA, it rolled out everywhere the same year, was because a lot of the effects are basically coming from some like the stuff like the trade shows. Like at this point in time, we just had Midsummer Scream in Long Beach. And one of the things is a lot of the haunts have presences there, at least for California. But it's also people that have developed technology, and they're like, this is a technology you can use to scare people, or at least to build the atmosphere when you're scaring people. And one of the things that came out about 10 years ago now, was the combination of using a fog machine and like a laser projector thing. To project a plane of light, with the idea being to create the effect of the surface of water. And so I've seen it used three different ways. One way is you actually give the idea that everybody's underwater by putting it up at like roof level, which is an interesting thing. I've only seen a video of that. Knott's actually use this below the step, below like a bridge that they put, a footbridge that they put in, so to get the idea that you're walking over water for a maze called the Deep, which was some comment. I don't think they knew what was going on with that one. It was kind of a combination of, it's called the Deep because we're doing mining and we're in tunnels and stuff, but then also there's ships later. And I don't
that's interesting.
It's like this title works for either concept,
but not both.
But I don't know, the concepts don't work with one another.
Right.
It's like outside, there's a giant fish or a giant shark that someone caught, and also evil miners. I don't fully get what we're doing here, but okay. It was weird mix. But yeah, so one of them was, as you're approaching the boat, you're walking over a small bridge, and they've given the illusion that you're going over water by having fog machine like blue laser. The other thing that they would do is you go into a room and it's projecting at about waist high as though you're wading through water. And what it does is it means that no one below that can see, or if it's done right with enough fog, you can't see what's below the laser lights. And so now anybody that can be hiding in the bottom 3 feet of the room can just move around and then pop up and scare people.
Oh, right.
It's when it doesn't have enough, you kind of just see them, or if they're not good at it, like I would be horrible at it. I cannot be crouched down and moving well enough. It's like I am bad at that. The people who are good at it, though, you'll see them pop up one spot and then suddenly they're on the other side of you. Works really well.
Yeah.
And we saw it so Knott's used it in 2 separate spots. It was awesome. It's a really cool effect. That year, I saw it at about 5 haunts. We'd never seen it before. And then it was just it's like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I've never seen this before. And we went to the next place. It's like, this is still cool, but this is the second time. And by the end of the season, it was like, this came out early this year, didn't it?
Yeah, this is the hot new thing.
This is the hot new thing. Everyone had it. So Knott's had it in a couple different spots, but it was that kind of stuff is what appeals to me. And so Knott's is really good at having things that have either the good use of technology or the good use of theming. They had one that was the idea of vaguely Scooby-Doo-ish in a sense, was kind of like you're going into a haunted dark ride. I read about this one. Yeah, I think at points it is. There's parts of it that felt very much that they were borrowing elements of the Haunted Mansion in there. Which is not a surprise in that being just down the road from Disneyland, there is a bit of a one-sided tension, perhaps. Did you get a chance to watch The Hanging?
Yes.
Yeah, so one of the things you would have noticed in there then, that was actually part of what I liked about the video I sent you, which was the 50th anniversary Hanging. So the one from 2023, was they called back something they had done a few years earlier, which was a parody of World of Water, which is just a sprinkler and some colored lights. And it was absolutely incredible. And there's a longer version of that from the first time they did it that they called back on the 50th, as well as making fun of, that was the year that Fantasmic's dragon just caught on fire.
Right.
And then was down. And Knott's already had that dragon, because a previous year was the year where they updated the dragon and it wasn't working right. So that dragon has been in the Hanging at least 3 separate years as they've continued to make fun of it. And so there's especially from Knott's, there's always some jabs towards Disneyland at some point in there.
Mm-hmm.
So having a dark ride that is clearly borrowing a bit from the Haunted Mansion certainly would check out. I've made the mistake of wearing a Haunted Mansion shirt to Knott's in the past.
Uh-oh.
And I'll be going through mazes and just have someone jump out and just yell "wrong park" at me.
Wrong park, asshole. Yeah, I've seen videos of like the train robbers, and they'll be like, hey, at least you're not getting robbed by a rodent or something like that. Like,
the train robbers.
There's all kinds of little shots. But yeah, as of 2023, which, as you said, was the 50th year anniversary, Knott's Scary Farm is the largest event of any kind at any theme park, which is wild. Apparently, Halloween Haunt is, I don't know if it's still to this day, but it's still kind of the official event name, and Knott's Scary Farm is more like, oh, the park transforms into Knott's Scary Farm for this event. But the branding has really kind of gone away from Halloween Haunt completely, and now everyone knows it as Knott's Scary Farm.
Yeah, that's just such a good name.
It is, yeah. And I mean, Knott's Merry Farm for Christmas, like everyone loves a pun.
Yeah, no, and it's a good name, and it avoids the problem of almost everybody else's of keeping track of a name that doesn't really tie into the park, because you've got Halloween Horror Nights and Fright Fest. It's like, okay, they're both alliterative, but neither of those tie to what they're at.
Yeah, and I mean, also, Fright Fest, Fright Night, Fear Fest. Like, there's going to be so many similarities in those, but like, Knott's Scary Farm, you own that.
Yeah, SeaWorld has entered the game recently, and they have Hallow Scream, which is enough that I've been to that multiple times, and I still had to go check what it's called because I don't remember. So yeah, so many of the others. Actually, weirdly, because it's sort of non-adjacent, the only other one that actually came up with a good name on this that's clearly I know what that is Castle Park, which is where the guy who helped start this later opened, because their thing is Castle Dark.
Yeah.
Which is like solid. I know exactly which one that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the rest blend in. The only other one that kind of lucks, the other ones that luck out are just, they're unique enough events that their name is about that.
Yeah.
Dark Harbor helps to be like, clearly that's at the water, which is the Queen Mary's.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, that name is distinct to that. But so many others just feel generic Halloween name that you can swap them around. And no, you wouldn't keep track, but
yeah,
Knott's Scary Farm works for that.
Yeah, I mean, Oogie Boogie Bash, obviously, Disney has so much IP, they could pick whatever they want, but
yeah, I don't count Disney on this, because Disney, what I would love to see Disney do, they won't do it. I understand they won't do it. What I would love to see Disney do is start doing a thing like, every year there's an Olympics, don't bring your kids. We're gonna see what happens if we try to go scary instead of fun Halloween.
Oh, that would be interesting.
I would love it. It's very much inspired by the stories of that. I think in Florida for Tower of Terror, there's at one point talks about having that be a actual hotel you could stay in as well. And they could put effects in the rooms.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I would love that. So I'm like, I would love Disney just to come up with a policy like, every 4 years, we're actually going to compete with the other places and see what happens.
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. Like, especially at this point, their own properties are starting to turn into horror movies anyway. So you may as well go for it. I'd love to see what they could do in the actually try to be scary part, but until they do that, it's very much in a separate camp from everything else in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, they could try it with just like one of those Disney After Dark nights when they do like Grad Night, or they just did 90s Night or whatever. Just try that once with a horror night and see how that goes. And if it goes well, then maybe you can expand it.
Yeah, it'd be so neat. It'd be so easy. So much of their stuff is already creepy.
Mm-hmm.
It would involve keeping the Haunted Mansion, the actual Haunted Mansion in Halloween, which would be wonderful.
Wouldn't it?
Like, I will gladly trade October for like March or whatever.
Sure.
Just fine. Push Christmas into March, but let me have Halloween at the Haunted Mansion.
I am 100% on board with that.
So yeah, I would love to see them expand that and enter the fray. But until they do, they're their own. They're not even attempting the same game that everybody else is.
That's true. Yeah. So yeah, Not Scary Farm has grown from 3 nights back in 1973 to this year. It will be from September 18th to November 1st. So as of the air date of this, it will be going on now. If you want to check it out, tickets are starting at $64 up to $200 if you want a all-inclusive ticket.
Which the front of the line does mean that it's something that, for as much as they have, whenever I've gone there with front of the line, we get through everything and have time to go back for seconds on the stuff we thought was good. So, and that price is probably double what it was 10 years ago, which is probably slightly frustrating. The price on that has gone up. It's still much cheaper than Universal is, I believe. I want to say Universal is still $100 more for front of the line or something. It is.
Damn.
It is steep, and it doesn't have as many mazes on that count. So there's a definite gap there, and there's more shows at Knott's, it feels like, as well, but they've still kept live entertainment in a way that other parks haven't, just in general and for Halloween. So it's it still feels like a very solid bang for your buck in terms of a large event.
Yeah. So if you're going and checking it out, hit me up on social media. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your favorite parts are. Mike, thanks for doing this. Thanks for giving me the idea. You want to go ahead and plug your podcast?
Yeah. So ordinarily I'm doing a podcast called the Old SwitchAroo, Gaming Retro with Mike and JMO. And the basic premise is my friend JMO and I are going through retro games that are available on the Nintendo Switch Online catalog that comes with the Nintendo subscription service. So that's covering games on the NES, SNES, Game Boy Advance, N64. The Switch 2 has just added the GameCube. And then for weird licensing reasons I don't understand fully, also a bunch of games from the Sega Genesis.
Right.
Which is great and does mean that we'll have an episode that I guess should be out before this, is Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls and Ghosts and Super Ghouls and Ghosts as a slightly lead into the Halloween season.
Nice.
Yeah, so that can be found anywhere you get podcasts, or our website is theoldswitcharoo.com, and you can find links to all our social media and podcast